Hello, welcome back to school. Um, I had a video, or I had a comment on my reading video about which books I would recommend for mastering scales. Um, and with that, I would include arpeggios, chords, and all that stuff. Um, so these are books that I pulled off my library shelf, and these are from roughly from least to greatest. I have 3 books for scales and arpeggios and that sort of thing, and I've got 2 books for chords. The first book, well, first let me say, if you want to master chords, scales, arpeggios, things like this, you really don't need a book. You need a basic knowledge of key signatures, an acoustic instrument, whether if it's organ, piano, or harpsichord, whatever. An acoustic instrument would be far better than a digital or electronic, but of course, if you can't afford an acoustic, then you gotta go with what you can get. And you need a metronome and a good teacher, and I would say at least 1 or 2 of these books, or books similar to them. So these are just what I have in my library. When I go looking for books, I try to find the absolute best. So with that, we're going to go through here and see what we have. So this first book is literally just a book of chords, and it is very thick. This is the thickest of all these books. So it basically is just a book of chords. That's all it is. It does have the chords listed in music notation on both the treble and the bass staff. It also has a keyboard layout with where the positions of the chords are on the keyboard. So if you don't read music, you can do it that way. But I would highly recommend that you learn to read music. If you do not read music, you're going to be much more happier. Granted, it's going to seem like, it's just like reading anything. Reading, books and things. Learn to read music. Don't get by with just using keyboard finger charts like this. Learn to read music. Most of these books do have what I would consider chord theory. They may talk a little bit about how they're used, how they're built, why they're important, things like that. So this book is basically just a book of chords. I wouldn't necessarily use this for learning, but it's a great reference material if you're looking at, say, lead sheets and they give you a chord symbol like B flat 13, flat 9, and you have no clue what that is. You can go to this book and pretty much easily find it. This is basically like, it's kind of like a dictionary for musical chords. And this book, they are listed by keys. So like, if we were to just page through the C major one, this would be like your basic stuff, and then they start introducing other chords. within the C family. And this goes on for literally pages. I'm not real fond of how this layout is. There's a big white spot here. I see this as a waste of paper. And you're still in C. And you're still in C. This one I think, no, that's still C. Somewhere along here you get to like C sharp or something. Yeah, that looks like a C sharp D. Okay, so this is your new key area. But either way, these chords go on for a very, very long time. So this is a good reference book. I wouldn't use it for necessarily learning. This book, I would say, is about the same. It's along the same lines. It's definitely a lot thinner, but it's still not the thinnest book. This book is nice because it has charts in the back. It also has basic theory, things like that about chords. One of the nice things about this book is that they break the chords up by basic, intermediate, and advanced. So whereas this book, they just give you all the chords in one key family, which for some people can be really overwhelming. This book, they actually break it down into basic, intermediate, and advanced. So once you learn all the basic chords, you could then move on to the intermediates, and once you learn those, you can move on to the advanced and all this good stuff. This layout is a little bit better. It's set up, I would say this book is set up more as like a textbook type style. It's got a bunch of good reading and things in the front and in the back. But as far as the actual chord layout, is that my, yeah, my cat's foot is, there you go. My cat is deciding to take a bath right now. So, like if we're going through, let me see here, where's the, okay, here. So here is the chord sheet layout for the C major and the C sharp minor, C sharp major. These are what they would consider basic. So like if you're just doing a C major, just work on the C major stuff. This one has the notation in bass clef, not in treble clef, but it does have the keyboard, which is nice and big, so people can utilize that. This would be a sample of the intermediate passages or the pages. Now for the advanced, they don't actually have them written out, but instead they just have them written in like charts, kind of like this stuff here. There is in the back here, there is a really, really nice, I would call this a good reference chart of all the chords. It's got them pretty much grouped by families, and instead of actually writing down the letters, actually write down the scale degrees and whether or not if that is sharp, flat, or whatnot. In the back, they also have a handy scales chart for playing scales, but they don't have the actual notation. But actually, I think these are the scales themselves. Yeah, these look like, yeah, these are the scales themselves. So they do have the letters, and how to play the various scales. Basically like the alphabetic name. This book I would use for actual learning of the chords because they do have them in a nice systematic order. That would be if I'm learning how to play off lead sheets and things like that. This would be the book that I would use to at least get a basic foundation of learning chords, especially with that sort of stuff. The next book, these last three, deal with more common types of techniques, the scales, arpeggios, and things like that. This first book is basically a book that covers all, well, I wouldn't say all the scales, but a basic majority of the scales. And again, a lot of these have basic introductory stuff like why it's important to practice scales and things like that. This book is nice because it has a checklist with metronome markings for each of the techniques specifically in this book. So then once you get over that, you open to your first page and you have the scales. They have them in just basic crotchets or quarter notes, and then they have them in eighth notes. This is up 1 octave, this is up 2 octaves, I believe. Yeah. And then they have them in contrary motion, and then they have them in thirds, which I never ran across scales in thirds until university. But if you're going that route, definitely practice scales in thirds, sixes, and tens, which you really don't need the notation for tens. You could just take your third, take your right hand, and move it up an octave, and there you have a 10. Or else, you can do it that way. Just make sure that your intervals are 10 apart. And this is sixes. And over here you have your chords. Now these are just your basic 3-note chords, I believe. Yeah, let me zoom in on that and see. Yeah, these are just basic 3-note chords. Then they have your dominant sevens. Then they have your broken arpeggios, or these are your broken chords. These are like those things that I practice on the organ. And these are arpeggios with the different inversions. And then the last thing they have here are some cadences, which they're basically like a 1-4-5. What is it? 1-4-1. I don't even know what this is. Let me see. 1-4-1-5-5-7-1. So your 5-7 is your dominant 7. So they have that cadence in the different inversions, which is a little unique. And then they go into the next key. That is pretty much the whole layout of this particular book. They don't have octaves, or they don't have octaves or anything like that. This basically just is like the bare bone basics of techniques. They do have, it looks like pentatonic scales, so you can learn those, and fingering charts for different things. So this book, if you're just learning and you don't know really if you want to continue with piano or not, this would be a good book. It has the basic foundational information, but it doesn't have all the advanced things that you would need if you're, say, going to study for a long time. But this is a good reference book for just getting started. This book, which I've seen, which these last two are the ones that I use a lot. This is my actual library reference copy. As my copy that I have, I've got a bunch of marks in it, highlights and things like that. So this is my reference copy, so don't break it. But this book, the red book, I ran across this book, I think it was a couple years ago. I'd run across a video series. They were doing technique, like how to actually play techniques by this book, or this gentleman, Boris Berlin. And he wrote a technique book. He wrote the scales and chords book. And he also wrote a book for like different exercises of Hennen and Schmidt. And so all of three books are supposed to be used together if you're actually like studying them all together. But yeah, so this book, even if you don't get the Schmidt and Hennen book or the his technique book, which his technique book is really good, but you have to know how to play them. Otherwise, you're not gonna learn very much. But this book is a really good reference book. I'm actually gonna get another copy to add it to my library, my reference library, because this is just a great book. So this book, it's a step up from the previous book, but this book I love the layout of this. It doesn't waste paper. Granted, people say, well, the notes are small. I kind of like smaller notes because then you could fit more information on the page. But yeah. Okay, so this book basically has all the keys. It starts off with your scale in 2 octaves, eighth notes, no preparatory stuff, nothing like that. Then they have the scales in thirds, and then they have the scales in sixes, and then they have the scales in tens. Now this is, the 10 and the sixes, or the thirds, are pretty much the same. The only thing that's different is one of your notes is moved up 1 octave. But it is nice that they do have this written out like this for anyone that's curious. This is a little bit more advanced. These are doubled thirds. These are more, we'll just say these are advanced. But in general, these are your basic scales. Then here they have the chords. The nice thing about this is that they have the 3-note chords and the broken chords. And then they introduce the 4-note chords, and again the broken chords here. Then they have your dominant 7s, and again your broken dominant 7s. And then they introduce the arpeggios, your root, your first, and your second inversion. And then your dominant 7 arpeggios, root, first, second, third inversion, so on and so forth. I'm trying to see what this is. Let me zoom in on this. Okay, so we got dominant 7s, root, first inversion, second inversion, and third inversion. That's right, because there's a 7. So this is your basic, these are your basic basic stuff, other than this doubled scale thing here at the bottom. Oh, I totally missed the contrary scales. Wow. Yeah, there's a contrary scale here too. So this thirds, the scales in thirds, doubled thirds, I would say it's the most advanced thing of these two pages. Now they do have scales and octaves. See these, see whatever that page number is. But basically, they have the scales and octaves, and then they have the diminished chords, which are presented in the minor of each key. So if this is C major, the minor would be A minor because they use the relative minor. So let's go to the key of A minor. Real quick, before we go to the minor, as I was going to the minor, I forgot to mention this cute little handy chart up here. It's got some really useful information that would be good for learning and recitation work. Okay, so now we're going to go to the minor. Welcome to the key of A minor. Okay, so here each minor section is broken up into 3 pages. And here you have your D minor. No, your E minor. I forget exactly how they have this book listed out, if they're by chromatics or by fourths or fifths. But anyways, again, you have interesting information up here that would be good for learning. And then for your scales, they have the different forms. They have the harmonic. Let's see the harmonic. Yes, they have the harmonic minor scale. So again, they have the scales in simple octave format, your thirds, your sixes, your tens, your doubled thirds, and contrary motion. And then they have the melodic minor. This is melodic minor. And they have the same forms. Your octaves. And they still have this little chart up here, so study that. Your octaves, your thirds, your sixes, your tens, your doubled thirds, and contrary motion. So the nice thing about this book is that the scales are all in the same position, if that makes sense. Turning over the page, you have your basic 3-note chords and the broken chords. And then you have the 4-note chords and the broken chords, which those are the same as the major. Not the same notes, but the same layout. And then you have your diminished 7. So with the major scales, you have your dominant 7. With the minor scale, you have a diminished 7. And the diminished 7 is like one level up from the dominant 7. But they have the chords of the diminished 7, and then they have the arpeggios, or the broken chords. I don't know why I call these arpeggios. These are broken chords. Then they have the minor form. Either way, these are arpeggios. So we have the arpeggios and the different root, first, second inversion. And then we have, I think these are the dominant 7s. Nope. Again, these are the diminished 7s of the arpeggio, of the diminished 7 arpeggios. Root, first, second, third inversion. And that's pretty much the layout of that. And then you have your new key. Now they do have octaves, which are in a completely different spot of the book. As I was going to the octaves, I saw that they have chromatic scales in here. So they have chromatic scales. If you need something more challenging, that's what all of this is. Again, they have them broken up into different formats. I would say the doubled, like the doubled thirds and sixes, are much more advanced than the ones over here. These are your octaves. They don't list them all out. They basically give you like basic fingering, because once you learn the fingering of 1 or 2, it's kind of standard for the rest of them, with a few alterations which are mentioned here. But these are basically your octaves. The other thing that they have here are cadences. So here they have your 1, 4, 5, 1. That might be a 5, 7. Let me see. Nope, that's just a regular 5 chord. So 1, 4, 5, 1 is basic introductory to cadences. So they have that written out in all the keys, so you can use those to learn a little bit about chords. The last thing in here is key signatures and key signatures. So that concludes this book, which I would recommend this book if you're doing more serious study, especially if you're like in the, I don't know, high school range, or if you know that you're gonna pursue longer into music. This is a really, really good book. It doesn't have like any checkoff charts or anything, but I guess you could just check them off in the book or whatever, or make your own checkoff chart. That's what I did. This is the last book that I would recommend, and this is the book that I would recommend if I had a piano and a desert island and a bunch of water. And I was only allowed to bring one music book for technique. This would be the book that I would bring. This book is like a gold mine. Whether or not if you're starting in basic, or if you're like pursuing graduate level material, I usually say this is like, this book will take you from basic scales and things, like learning about keys and, all that stuff. This will take you to that basic level. It'll take you all the way through graduate and beyond, because there is stuff in here that these other books that I have mentioned don't have. So this book, you can still buy it, obviously, and it's also, I think it's in public domain, but I'm not sure. But all of these books, I will put links in the description below, if the books are still available. Okay, so this is the book, Mastering the Scales and Arpeggios, by James Francis Cook, or Cookie? Cook. I don't know how to say that. Anyways, this book is basically what it is. The person commenting had said, how do you master the scales? This is it. This is going to be your book that will help you get you there. Contents, information. One of the neat things I love about this book is that it has a whole page of really fine pianists talking about why it's important to practice scales and arpeggios and chords and things like that. I mean, they have Rachmaninoff. I think Joseph Levine is in here. Czerny is in here. This is like really, really insightful. A lot of these guys studied at conservatories where you did not play pieces until you learned all your scales and arpeggios to a T. So yeah, these guys know what they're talking about. So you have a couple lessons that talk about the history of scales and keys and things like that. This is really kind of just fascinating stuff if you like that sort of stuff. And here is when they actually start to introduce key signatures. So this book says, introduce the student to key signatures before you introduce them to like the actual scale. And they have these cute little exercises for learning the key signatures. And these I actually have played. So you'll have to check out my clavier playlist and you can see this stuff in action. And they've got little worksheet type things here for indicating key signatures and writing out scales. And these are your minor. And then here is your introductory to thumb crossings and things. So those are important for gaining quick thing of the thumb. Also, I would say, like, instead of just putting your thumb under the finger, is to kind of tilt your hand. If you tilt your hand towards the direction of the thumb, your thumb will actually move and you can almost drop it where it needs to be played. Obviously, your hand would, yeah. So with the whole thumb thing, don't just cross your thumb because it's going to be really bad for your hand and you're going to develop tendonitis in your thumb. I had that happen when I was just after I left university. I got tendonitis in my left thumb. Or no, my right thumb. But lift your hand and just kind of, your thumb will drop into place. When I get the learning scales again, I can go through that in more detail. But here, these are your basic scales in 1 octave format, and they also have cadence at the end. And so they have them broken up into different families by finger families. So that's basically, I would say all of that is all your rudimentary stuff, which is a lot. Your second level of material in here would be the actual scales. Each of these have preparatory exercises for the difficulties of that particular key. Oh, good. The cat's gone. So each of these has preparatory exercises. As far as the actual scales, they are broken up into similar and contrary motion. So whereas the first book, or the Red Scales book, the Boris Berlin, it just has the scales in similar motion with the thirds and sixes and tens, and 1 contrary motion with the octaves. This book has the contrary motion of the thirds and the sixes and the octaves. I do not think this book has them written out in tens. Let me see. Let me zoom in on this and see. Yeah, this looks like it's in sixes. So they do have guidelines of where your fourth finger lies. That's one of the things that, where the fourth finger goes is really important. So you have your C major, and then you have your C minor. Again, some reading. And this first part, all the scales are written the same in the same formats. So once you're done with your C major and C minors, you then go to G major and G minor. And it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. Hold on. We've gone too far. Where's the next section? Okay, these are still... Okay, I think we've hit a new section. Okay, this is an interesting section. If you're working on, like, finger articulation or speed or something, this is a neat section that will kind of help you through that. So basically the concept is you need to start your metronome extremely slow at like 40. And the reason why you want to do that is because as you work through these pages here, you're going to go from really slow to moderate to really quick finger work. And you need to be able to play these quicker finger work within the tempo. So, this thing also have accents, I think, on various beats, if I'm not mistaken. So, that is there. I'm trying to get my foot comfortable. So, the next section in this book, this is why I said this is like very basic to graduate level material. They have all the scales in doubled thirds. And, again, these are just basically the scales. Oh, here, the country motion. And these are your chromatic scales in double thirds. I must have missed the chromatic scale in single octaves. Chromatic scales in sixes. Let me see if I can find the chromatic scale in octaves. Okay, so these are your scales, your chromatic scales in octaves. They have different fingering, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, they got the scales in chromatic and similar in contrary motion. So then after you're done with that, you move on to more advanced material. Somewhere in here are these are octaves. Oops. Those don't look like octaves. These look like octaves. One of the things I don't like about this book is how it's organized. It's really hard to find stuff. These are your octaves, scales. And it just goes through the different keys. Here are your octaves in contrary motion. I'm really getting comfortable on my bed right now. And here are more octaves. Somewhere in here they have, this page, these next couple pages, introduced you to velocity and how to obtain that. I shouldn't really use the word velocity. Yeah, velocity is dealing with speed. So yeah, velocity. Then they have a section here on chords, what they are, how they're built, things like that. And of course, if I can move past this point, more reading and theory about chords. And then they have the actual chords and its broken version. Now these are only the 4-note chords. So they don't have the 3-note chords. These are all 4-note chords. So basically they have the chords and your little broken version of it. And then here they actually have the full broken chords in with the different inversions. And then you go on to your next key. Your arpeggios are here too. So this is your arpeggios down here. So these are your chords, and they have a little broken version of each chord. And then over here, they have the broken versions of all the chords together. Kind of, this is what I play. And then your arpeggios, and then your next key. That's how that's broken up. This is why I like the Boris Berlin book better. But this book has a lot, I mean a lot of stuff in here. So all of those are basically your basic versions, standard things for the chords and the arpeggios. Your forms of contrary, sixes, things like that, they're listed here. They're not written in every key. I don't think they are. But there's a bunch of different stuff here with contrary motion and that sort of stuff. So all of that is here. And here you have even more. These would be like Alberti bass type material. So these are here for further study and enjoyment. If somebody really loves this sort of stuff, this book will keep them busy. Let's see, what else do we have? More of the same, just different inversions and things like that for the chords. The G major and the G minor. So this is dealing, I think, this is your broken, I can't read that, broken chords and arpeggios of the dominant 7. So this is your dominant 7 chords and arpeggios listed out with the different inversions and the keys. I'm trying to move on to the next page and it won't let me turn. Okay. So again, you have diminished or dominant 7s. After you're done with the dominant 7s, you move into this section, which is again more versions, more extended exercises in the arpeggios of the dominant 7. So again, just as they had the contrary and stuff for the root chords, they're the same thing for the dominant 7. For the different contrary and things like that. I'm not exactly sure what this is. This looks like diminished 7. So they don't have the chords for the diminished, but they just have the arpeggios. Broken chords and things like that. I think all that's left in here is a diminished. Yeah, all that's left in here is just the diminished 7. These are all written out. Oh, look at there. You have more forms of the diminished 7. So, if you want to have fun with that, here's another section up here. Various forms in arpeggios, extension, the dominant 7 and to the diminished 7. So again, more advanced things if you want to play around with that. And I think these are written out in all the keys. And that's the last page of this book. So, that concludes going through this book, which I would highly recommend this book. But the red book is great if you don't want to get into all this craziness. The red book is probably your best bet for a nice balance between the blue book and this book, the one with the keyboard on it. This book, the one with the keyboard, your basic stuff is in here. Like I said, the neat thing about this book is that there's a checkoff chart. And then as far as the chords, this would be my recommendation for this book, as it's broken up into different levels per se. And it also has that nifty chart in the back for, all the chords, and you don't have to really know the letters. You just learn the scale degree. And this book, I really wouldn't use it except for a reference. And that's pretty much all it is. It's a reference book. It's not really going to help you learn the chords, but you can use it to learn the chords. But I just use it for a reference book. So these are basically my top picks for chords, scales, and arpeggio books. I hope this helps. Links will be in the description if you're curious. None of them are affiliated. I really don't have any intentions of doing any of that stuff. So yeah, but these are just my general and sincere thoughts about these books and how they're used.